All right. So we are recording now, and my name is Annalisa. I'm the program coordinator for diversity and inclusion here at APSA. Kim was unable to join us today, but she sends her regards and wishes that she could be on the call with you. So I'm envisioning that, again, this will take maybe 30 minutes, and since there's only a few of us on the call, I was going to reserve question and answer for the end, but it seems like we can keep this a little more informal since there's only a few of us on the call. So if you do have a question, feel free to ask at any point. And I think on Zoom, you should be able to see a button that says raise your hand. So if you do see that and you want to use it, feel free to do that. I'll try to keep my eye on the chat window as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Great. Okay. Okay, so why don't we just do some introductions? So listed on the slide here, if we could share name, pronouns, what your institution is, your role as a mentee or mentor, and then one sentence about why you enrolled in the program. And I'll go ahead and start just by way of introducing. So my name, like I said, is Annalisa. My pronouns are she and her. My institution is APSA, so the American Political Science Association, and my role is coordinator for the mentoring program. And similar to that, since my role is as coordinator, the reason that I'm here on the call is to facilitate the mentor and mentee pairs as they start.
Okay, so my name is Philip. I'm a fifth-year PhD student at the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia. My mentor is Dr. Mershon from the University of Virginia. So I've been always interested in mentorship, and I've never really been like formally enrolled in the mentor-mentee program. So I guess I'm just interested in learning more about publications, looking for academic jobs, that kind of stuff.
All right, I'll follow up. So my name is Wilde. Currently I'm a PhD scholar, postdoctoral researcher at Harvard Kennedy School, and my role is mentee here as well. And I really this program because I wanted to get more practical to start, like thinking about publications and academic jobs, specific publications of books and grant applications as well.
Great. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our timeline. And if it's all right with you, I'm going to just mute everyone for a second so there's no background noise, so just to let you know. Okay, so briefly, for the short-term mentor pairs, as you know, the matches were made in October, and it's early November now, and we're doing the online orientation, so we're right on schedule. For these pairs, since they are short-term, we would imagine that in November, if you haven't already, I know some folks have already made appointments with their mentors and mentees and are planning to meet either by phone, Skype, email, or some folks I believe are meeting in person, which is certainly not required, but I know that some folks already have these first conversations set up. And we certainly hope that since these, again, are short-term pairs, that you would do that as soon as possible. Because that first conversation after this orientation, or if you've already had it, what we hope will happen in the first conversation is outlining expectations and goals for what you are looking for out of this relationship. And then developing a plan based on what the mentor and mentee discuss in terms of what their expectations and goals are. Once you've discussed your expectations, and again, we hope that you would do that soon after this orientation, then you'd have about 2 months to meet or talk or work toward the goals that you outline mutually with your mentor or mentee. And then finally, in December, APSA staff will send an evaluation both to the mentors and mentees to help evaluate how your experience in the program was. This is the first time that APSA is doing sort of discrete time frames for mentoring relationships, which we're really excited about because it'll allow us to do an evaluation in a more intensive way, in a more intentional way. So this evaluation is really critical to us here at APSA in terms of helping us to keep improving the program so that we can make it better for mentors and mentees in the future. And should you wish to enroll again as a mentor or mentee, we'd hope to make the program better based on the evaluations that you submit in December. And then just to note, these are optional. In January 2018, it's National Mentoring Month, and APSA will be doing a social media campaign. So if you would like to recognize your mentor for their outstanding mentoring that they're doing, we'll reach out to all the mentors and mentees to share success stories, and we'd love to share what's going on via our social media to participate in, again, it's National Mentoring Month. So there will be other mentoring programs that will be participating in this, and we want to make sure that political scientists are part of that conversation. And then again, optional, next August or September, if you happen to be able to travel to the APSA annual meeting, which next year is in Boston, mentors and mentees are invited to the mentor networking reception. And that reception has been going on for several years at this point, and it's really meant to be sort of an informal way for mentors and mentees to connect. And it's actually open to anyone who is an APSA member at the meeting. It's not just specifically for mentors and mentees. It's supposed to be sort of a welcoming environment, an inclusive environment where people can get on the spot mentoring, or mentors and mentees who have been formally matched, if they're in different cities, but they happen to be in the annual meeting city, it's a great time for them to actually get some face-to-face time, because we know that sometimes our mentors and mentees are living across the country from each other and doing sort of e-mentoring. So are there any questions immediately about the timeline?
Hang on. So the program runs formally until the end of the semester, but we can continue sort of communicating informally even after it officially ends, right? That's just up to me and the mentor, right?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. We definitely encourage you, if both the mentor and mentee are interested in continuing the relationship, definitely to continue it. The formal part of the program, which we'll be evaluating, is from just November to December. And we intend to have these short-term relationships actually go for an entire semester, because it was a new program. This short-term mentoring time frame didn't start as early as we had hoped. We had hoped to have this start in early October rather than early November. But we'll be able to evaluate the 2 months that you'll have together now. And then, yes, like I said, if you and your mentor wish to continue together, you're definitely encouraged and welcome to do so.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good idea, because I imagine that the mentorship experience will be perhaps the most useful if it continues over like a longer period of time. So like, hopefully these first 2 months will just be a start of like a more long-term endeavor. I think that'll be great.
Yeah, and just to be clear too, there is a long-term option to the mentoring program, which we make those matches in the fall as well. And those matches would run formally for both the fall and spring semesters. So this mentoring is the short-term mentoring pairs. So we're formally evaluating this just for 1 semester, but there are another set of mentors and mentees that we'll be formally evaluating over the course of an entire academic year. So for example, if you would wish to re-enroll in a long-term program next year, you'd be welcome to do that. And on your mentoring form, which you filled out to request a mentor, you would indicate on there that you are looking for a long-term relationship rather than a short-term relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Can we request the same mentor if we have already a good relationship with the mentor?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely a possibility. Great. Any other questions about the timeline?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Perfect. So I just wanted to share briefly some information from the Center for the Improvement of Mentored Experience and Research, or CIMR. This is an organization that is run out of the University of Wisconsin, and they are doing fantastic work on researching what makes mentoring relationships successful. And they work with actually a number of different associations like the American Sociological Association and a number of others. And Kim and I have been in touch with CIMR as we were redefining what our mentoring program looked like. So I wanted to share some information with you about how CIMR defines mentoring. And what they really emphasize is that mentoring is best when it's a collaborative learning relationship. So it's not just a one-way street of knowledge from the mentor to the mentee, but it's really something where both mentor and mentee are mutually learning and mutually growing with respect to the relationship. Yeah, I guess I won't read this. I just won't read the slide to you. But are there any questions about how CIMR is defining mentoring, and does that sound reasonable? Does that sound like something that you're expecting, this sort of collaborative learning relationship?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Okay. And I wanted to share a little bit more. This again is from CIMR. So these are some skill areas that CIMR suggests that mentoring could take place around. So often in mentoring relationships, mentees particularly, will go into a mentoring relationship thinking that there's only one thing that they need from a mentor and not realize that there are a whole range of different ways that you could engage with a mentor. And similarly, mentors sometimes will think that, oh, there's only one thing that I really can impart my knowledge to a mentee, not realizing that there are many, many different ways that mentoring can take place. So, for example, mentoring can take place around research skills, around diversity and culturally focused skills, interpersonal skills, sponsorship skills, and psychosocial skills. And Kim said yesterday, as we were talking to some of the long-term mentors and mentees, and this was a great point that she made that I'd like to bring up here, is that no one mentor or mentee is going to be able to provide mentoring around all of these topics. So it's really about identifying what you and your mentor or mentee are looking for out of the relationship. So it might be that you define that you really want to focus on advancing equity and inclusion in your work. And that's the one thing that you really want to think about. Or it might be that you really want to think about developing career self-efficacy. And so you identify a mentor who can help you with that. And a lot of times folks don't realize that these are all possible skills that could be developed through mentoring relationships. And another thing that Kim had mentioned yesterday, she made a comparison to the way that investment portfolios are set up. And when you're setting up investment portfolios, you're often counseled to diversify your portfolio. So she suggested that as you're thinking about where you need mentoring, you might have several mentors to help you meet different needs that you might have. So your APSA mentor might help you with your disciplinary research skills, but you may have another mentor who you focus with on your psychosocial skills, for example. So different mentors for different needs. Does that make sense to the folks on the call? Are there any questions about this?
It makes sense, but I was also wondering, since I haven't met my mentor yet, and Kristen sounds lovely, and I think we're gonna meet next week already. But so I mean, I guess we have to be open, right? In the sense that I might want something, you know, like help with something, but Kristen might be surprisingly helping me with other ways that I wouldn't even imagine. But then I might not get that core help regardless, if that's clear. I mean, so on the one hand, we might have specific needs, but it might not be that mentor we found through this program or other programs is not able to respond to that. So does it mean that we should reach out to other mentors, or should we just, you know, try to get as much as possible from the same mentor? What would you recommend in that regard?
Thank you for the question. That's great. Yeah, actually, I think on the next slide or the one after, I'll talk about being open to communication with your mentor right at the beginning. And again, because these are short-term relationships, that first conversation that you have with your mentor is going to be super important, just to help you identify what it is that you and your mentor are looking to do during this relationship. And I'm going to follow up after this orientation, probably on Monday, with an email that will have a recording of this presentation, and then it will also have a couple of worksheets, actually, one for mentors and one for mentees, that will help you think through what your goals might be. I would hope that you would take some time to look at the worksheet before you have that first conversation with your mentor or mentee, because that'll help you actually identify what it is that you're looking for, so that when you have the meeting with your mentor or mentee, you can articulate specifically, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z thing. Is this something that you would be open to? And then in that conversation, they can either say yes or no. And similarly for mentors, they can identify, here are the things that I think I might be best at providing mentoring on. Is this something that you need? So that in that initial conversation, you're both able to identify what you're looking for out of the relationship, and then come to a collaborative decision about what you both want from this mentoring experience. Does that somewhat answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. Anything else before we move on?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so wrapping up, the key takeaways that I would hope you would leave this orientation with are that mentoring relationships are all different, and that's actually a good thing because folks are all different, right? So mentors and mentees all have different needs and are all at different stages of their careers, and we recognize that mentoring is a personal relationship in many ways at the same time as a professional relationship. So we recognize that each mentoring relationship is different, which is why in some ways doing an orientation is about, for us, making sure that all of these relationships are defining clear expectations, goals, and a plan, which is point number 2, right at the beginning. Since everybody is coming in with different expectations or different needs, what we hope that you'll do after this orientation is have a conversation, schedule some time to have a conversation with your mentor or mentee to help you define what your expectations, goals, and needs are, and then develop a plan right from the beginning about how to go ahead and achieve those goals. And the other thing I'd want to mention along with this is that for short-term mentoring experiences, you'd want to make sure that your goal is achievable or measurable within that short-term time. So if you have a goal, or if you're a mentee and you're looking for someone to maybe read over a resume or to to give you some feedback on your elevator pitch for a job. That's sort of a discrete goal that's measurable, that can be achieved in the short-term time frame. There's certainly many other things that you could do in the short-term time frame, but that's something that we would hope that you would talk with your mentor and mentee about. And then finally, a key to success is open communication and respect of each other's time. So as we all know, everybody is very busy, and email inboxes can be crazy, and we hope that when you are scheduling time to meet with your mentor or mentee, that you would be respectful of both the mentor and the mentee's time. So if you're a mentee and I'll go back to my example of someone looking for a mentor to read over a resume. If you're in that situation, you'd want to make sure that you give the mentor enough time to review the resume, rather than just sending it the day of and saying, hey, can you do this for me? Yeah, I think that's all I need to say about that. Are there any questions about any of these key takeaways?
I actually really liked your point about setting expectations and just having that conversation with your mentor about what you can realistically achieve in 2 months or so. So I just really like that suggestion, for example, of just sending them your CV for them to have a look at it. I think that's like a really good idea, but I think like the bigger point is just really have that conversation when you meet your mentor and like together try to figure out what can you realistically achieve in that short time period. I actually have a follow-up question on that. Does APSA have any guidelines for how often should we meet or talk to our mentor? Are there some best practices, or it all just depends on the individual relationship? Would you say like once a month, once every 2 weeks? Do you have any suggestions?
Sure, yeah, thank you for that question. And again, this is sort of bullet point number 1, that mentoring relationships differ widely. So what I would suggest is during that first meeting where you're defining expectations and goals, have some time during that meeting to discuss specifically what are we expecting of each other in terms of how often we're going to be in communication. For some mentors and mentees, emailing back and forth once a week is perfectly fine. For others, that becomes excessive. For some mentors and mentees, meeting once in person, if you happen to be in the same city, is enough. For others, it's not. It just depends on who you are, what you're looking for, what communication style works best for you, but that's something that we would hope that you would talk about during the first meeting where you're defining your expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'll send out, along with the recording of this webinar, a couple of worksheets to help mentors and mentees articulate what their expectations and goals are. And then I'm going to send out, actually, I'm going to move on to the next slide, because on here, there's a link, which is apsanet.org/mentoring resources. I'm going to send out one in particular that's linked on this mentoring resources website, but I'll send it to you all via email. It has some really great suggestions for sort of things to think through when you're having this first conversation, and best practices as well. So I will send that. I'm hoping to send that early next week, just depending on how long it takes me to get a recording of this webinar.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Any other questions at this point? We're almost wrapping up here.
That's fine.
Okay, well, great. This has been fabulous, and we've kept it to about a half an hour, so that's great as well. Like I mentioned already, resources are available. There's a whole bunch of different resources on the apsanet.org/mentoring resources page. And there's resources there for both mentors and mentees. And if you've never had a mentor before, or if you've never had a mentee before, I'd suggest maybe taking a look at the resources that we have available. There are resources from, I think it's the Ohio State University, Wisconsin University, the University of Michigan, and a few others that have put sort of documents together to help people think through what are the best ways to approach a mentoring relationship if you're new to it. And then should you have any questions along the way, you can always reach me and Kim at diversityprograms@apsanet.org, or at this point, I believe everyone has both of our personal email addresses at APSA. But again, we'd love to and welcome any questions that you have along the way. If you want to reflect back anything to us during the mentoring relationship, that's great. If you need assistance getting in touch with someone for some reason, please reach out to us. We're here to help facilitate these relationships and make them as successful as possible.
Awesome, that sounds good. Thank you so much for hosting this seminar. It was very useful for sure.
Okay, great, awesome. And again, I'll send out a follow-up email hopefully on Monday.
All right, thank you so much. This was really great.
Awesome, have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.